why do we say that? Why do we say never ever stop moving? What happens if we stop moving? And it doesn't matter if you're 30, 50, 80, or 95 or 100. If you stop moving at any time in your life, pretty soon you won't be able to move anymore. You lose the ability to get up and down, get out of a chair. You have a harder time walking. You can't go upstairs anymore. If we stop moving, arthritis will set in, we get stiffer, and obviously all those things happen to us as we get older anyway. So when you're 20, you're still jumping around and dancing and doing everything you ever wanted to do. You don't even think about hurting yourself or not moving. But I know people, they get to be in their 40s and they kind of get a little bit lackadaisical and sit around on the computer and don't really get out and move. And so it can easily start. So why keep moving? Mainly, there's the main benefits of movement is energy. If you don't move, you lose energy. You sleep better if you exercise and you move. You help maintain better bone density, muscle tone. You have mood enhancement because it's very stress reducing when we move, and then the ability to pretty much pursue any activity or anything that you want to do that makes you happy. If you can't move, there's just so many things that you can't do. You can't go rollerblading with your grandkids. You can't go jump roping, or you can't go to the gym and do any kind of exercise. So if we stop moving, we are doomed. And that's basically it. If we don't move, we're going to be doomed. Our bodies aren't going to like it. Our mind's not going to like it. It's physically damaging. It's mentally damaging. It's psychologically damaging. And that's where Mariela comes in about the mental. So the number one thing that we need to get moving or to keep moving is motivation. A desire and motivation. And where does that come from? Do you want to take a little bit of that as far as the mental, Mariela?
Sure. Well, I can tell you from personal experience that there's very little that motivates me to want to move or exercise. But that threat of, like you said, being more flexible, actually increasing my cognitive abilities because I do move more, can be a strong motivator. And I think that finding motivation is really something very personal that we have to find on our own, right? For a lot of people, they go to the doctor and the doctor gives them a list of diseases or illnesses that have now, due to age, due to health reasons, whatever it might be, and recommends that you start moving. That could be a motivator. It could also be because maybe you're experiencing some depression and anxiety, and definitely any type of movement, even if you're doing something as simple, which is really not that simple, but doing something like chair yoga, that's movement, right? So again, it's about what is your motivation, what is your motivator, and finding out what actually works for you. And I think that a lot of times, I know personally, I feel very overwhelmed when I have to think about exercise because there's so many forms of exercises that I could do, but it's finding what actually calls to me. And I know that, Manuela, when we were talking earlier this week, we actually touched a little bit on that. How do you find what actually works for you or what you actually want to do? Because especially if you're not very athletic or, exercising is really not your thing, how do you find something that actually could potentially be your thing?
Right. So one of the things I go back to sometimes is I ask people, what did you like doing when you were a kid? Like, let's say you're 50 years old. What did you like doing when you were 10 or 15 or 20? What are the things that gave you joy? Did you like to go out and dance? Did you like to jump rope? Did you ride bikes with your friends? Did you rollerblade? I mean, sometimes I think we look at exercise as something that has to be totally structured. And we just think about this box. You have to be in the gym, you have to do weights, you have to do the treadmill, you have to do the bike, you know, you have to do this and that. And it's really not that. Now, personally, I like doing those things. I like lifting weights and I like to go to the gym, but a lot of people hate it, you know. So for me, it's an enjoyable thing to do. But my sister, for instance, it's not so enjoyable. She's doing Pilates now. So there's just, so you look back to see what it is that gave you joy, you know, before you kind of stop getting out of doing some regular kind of movement. What did you like? Even gymnastics or yoga, or not that you were in a class, but you know, maybe did tumbling with your friends. I mean, I gave a talk at a city meeting one time, and I rollerbladed in. It was at a Sizzler restaurant, and they wanted me to talk about what makes exercise fun. And I thought, what I'm going to do, I love to rollerblade. So I'm just going to rollerblade in. So I rollerbladed into the restaurant and rollerblade up to the poem and made everybody kind of laugh. But I was saying this is exercise, right? It's exercise, but I love to do it. You can do it in the park. You can go down the beach. Same kind of thing with biking. I mean, how many of us grew up as kids riding bikes? Why can't we just get back on a bike? You know, we can go to the park where it's safe, where you're not going to feel like you're going to get run into. Choose something that you think is fun. And even if it doesn't seem like fun now, but you used to think it was fun, maybe try it again.
I'm curious to see what our participants actually do for exercise now or for movement. If you could share with us in the chat, it could be something like, I think we had one participant that was saying that she went for a walk. So what do you do for exercise now? Pilates, that's something that I've always been curious about, but never been brave enough to try. So kudos to whoever's doing Pilates.
This is why conversation sometimes is easier, because you're actually talking back and forth. So put it up on chat and we'll read it.
Oh, wow. Walking in Tai Chi. Okay, that's awesome.
And Tai Chi is amazing too. And it's really hard. I learned Tai Chi, never really taught it, just a senior Silver Sneakers has a Tai Chi thing program. And so I kind of went through their program, and even just doing that, which is not, it's on a lighter level. It's really good, because you have to use brain body connection. You have to hold postures and move slowly, and, you know, put the leg in a certain place and the arm at a certain place at the same time. I mean, it's an amazing practice. So that's awesome. What kind of walking?
I'm curious, Manuela, can you tell us what Tai Chi is? Because I am completely ignorant. What is Tai Chi?
It's a slow movement, a slow controlled movement. Maybe Jeff might even be able to give us a better explanation because he's doing it. It's very controlled. And you go through, the movements all have meaning. Like there's the like when your arm moves a certain way, then it's called I forget the terms, but there's a bird flying, or there's a, you know, and so your body slowly does these movements, and you move your arm a certain way, and you turn and your foot comes up. And so it's a very slow, disciplined, balanced form of movement. Now, it's not, I mean, I like it kind of better than yoga, because I don't have to put a lot of weight on my wrist. It doesn't hurt anywhere. Like I do yoga, for instance, for me, I can't put anything on my wrist. So I always have to be on my elbows. So it's an exercise that anybody can really do. Where my mom used to live in Alhambra, San Gabriel area, there's a beautiful park. And many times when I was walking there with her, I'd see like 20 Asian people that were doing Tai Chi together. And most of them are Asian because they're really into that. I mean, that's, you know, and some of them were like really older people. And it's amazing how beautiful it is and how graceful it is. And they're on the grass and they're all kind of doing it together. I think it's also very mentally de-stressing and relaxing. It's almost kind of like a meditation, right? Jeff? Do we hear from him?
Yeah,
Just in my neighborhood.
Tai Chi explanation involves a series of movements.
Deep breathing,
performed in a
right.
slow, yeah, focused
I
manner.
forgot to mention the breathing because that's a very important part of it too, right? So it's excellent for de-stressing, relaxation, control, balance, being very tuned into your body and the way the body moves. So it's really kind of a muscle workout too, because it is controlled and slow. And sometimes, you know, you're holding certain positions and you have to balance your weight. So yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. It wasn't even in my notes. So thank you for bringing up Tai Chi.
Angela Davis is just stretching.
Stretching.
Yeah, and I like stretching a lot. I do yoga and a lot of stretching, and that really helps with my back pain. I regularly do also the stationary bike, and I like to do that because of my knee injury. So that helps me a lot. Less impact in my knee, and walking also helps me. So yeah, I enjoy it, and I think that when you do something like Joe does Tai Chi, he really connects and he enjoys what he does. So if you have this connection with your exercise, it's not going to be so difficult to engage because you enjoy it in the moment. And you
Right. That's what I meant by finding the thing that you really like. The stretching, you know, there's three main components of fitness is cardiovascular, strength, and flexibility. And so flexibility is like a major factor of fitness and wellness. And if that's one of the first things that we lose with age. I mean, how many times do you hear people say they get out of bed and they can't really move very well in the beginning because everything kind of feels tight, you know, and if you can't get out of your chair because you're not flexible enough to go from a seated position to a standing position. I mean, stretching it's always important, but it's like one of the most important things to keep doing as you age, because it's going to allow you to stand in the shower and put your foot up and wash it because you have movement. It keeps you from getting hurt. If you are super tight and you're not stretched out and everything is kind of locked up, if you trip over a little something or you lose your balance, when you're flexible, you get out of those situations because you have movement. But if everything's locked up, you hurt yourself a lot easier. So I can't even stress enough how important stretching is. And we honestly, if we just take 10 minutes a day to do stretching and kind of go through the muscles in your body, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I mean, now you could just look something up on YouTube, how do I stretch my hamstring, you know, which is the back of your leg, and you can find all kinds of stretches. You can do it laying down, you can do it sitting up, you can do it standing. When I taught the workman's comp injured people, we had to find all kinds of different ways for them to stretch, right, Ivonne? I mean, they were injured. Some of them could not get on the mat or they couldn't stretch standing up. So there's ways that you can stretch in a chair. So you know, anybody can stretch. There's so many different ways. And again, that's a whole nother, that'd be like a class, but yes, very important. The thing I also wanted to say is tips on starting, like and I don't even know if anybody here is injured or has had an injury. If any of you have autoimmune disease, scleroderma, I had Angela. That's a tough thing to deal with, Angela. I had a client years ago that had that. And just over the years that I had her, I would stretch her out usually for a good 20 minutes. We did exercises together and then we'd spend a lot of time stretching. That is a tough thing to deal with, but that's really even more important for you to stretch and just to the capacity that you can. So are you able to stretch your body or just the face? I'll wait for her to respond. So when, let's say, scenario, you got hurt or you have a chronic thing that keeps you from moving. And how do I start? Touch my body. Oh, good. Okay. Do you have anybody that helps you with that, or do you stretch just by yourself? Sometimes assisted stretching is really good when you have that type of illness, where somebody can take you through stretches and move you. So it's more passive. So you're not actually having to do it yourself.
Mm.
Again, that's something you kind of have to look into. So I got off my subject because I was looking at her answer. What was I saying? I just forgot. Yes, if you have a chronic.
You were talking about tips. You were gonna share some tips.
About well, how do I start back? Like if I'm hurt and I haven't done anything for a long time, let's assume that you can walk, whether you have a cane or you can walk by yourself, or you have to hold on to somebody's arm. Walking is one of the best things you can start to do. I was in a seminar, these are just examples for continued ed years ago. It's not my dog. And when one of the instructors was all about fibromyalgia and how to exercise when you have fibromyalgia and what to do and what not to do. And he brought his wife who had severe fibromyalgia, and she had her speak, and she said, when I first started, I could take 3 or 4 steps outside my front door and had to turn around and go back in. And so by the time, then she would make it to the mailbox and back. And then she would make it just halfway down the sidewalk and back. But her whole point was, I could hardly walk, which happens, when you have an illness or an injury or something, but she did it. So she took 3 steps, 5 steps, 10 steps, and every day she did more. And eventually she was able to walk with her husband and go around the whole block and come back. So the idea is set really small goals. Set small goals, because sometimes we have these expectations. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it's going to happen in 3 months. And if it doesn't, then you're all like, okay, I give up, I can't do it. So the expectations that we have sometimes are unreasonable. Set a small goal and make it to that goal, and then set another goal and make them small. Maybe it is just walking around the block. Maybe it is, I'm going to take a yoga class and I'm just going to do it once a week and, start with beginning, see if I like it. So your goal should be small. Move gently and slowly, which I have to admit is very hard for me. I don't move slowly, but sometimes I have to. So I was recently in a car accident and I have whiplash, and I got on my treadmill and I could walk about half as fast as I usually walk. And I thought, I was just very frustrated with myself, and I had to remind myself, same kind of thing that I'm trying to put out there. Go slow, go at the pace that you can, gradually, and go back to, eventually be able to do the things that you were able to do before. I think the motivation and desire are the number one things that you have to get. And I think Mariela is a better expert on telling you how to get that, but if we don't have the desire, we won't do it. So inside of us, we have to really want to do something. The other thing that might help is have a friend. If you have a friend or a dog or somebody that wants to go exercise with you, but usually friends work really well, because you get up and you don't feel like going. Your friend's calling you and saying, hey, we're meeting, right? We're walking. And you go, well, I don't really feel like it. They go, come on, we made a commitment. And this time, you're going to go because she's there waiting, or he's there waiting for you to do this exercise with, or next time it'll be reversed. So when you have a friend that you're kind of accountable to and that you can exercise with, it brings a little bit, I think it's a friendship, it's joy, you're talking, you don't think about what you're doing so much, you have to answer to someone else. It's not just about you. Oh, I don't feel like doing it today, and then you just brush it off. but there's somebody else that's also waiting. They're going to do it with you. So you can't brush it off that easily. Low impact, don't try to do anything high impact, especially if you have any kind of injury. And a high impact would be running, jogging, jumping. In other words, all your movements are one foot's always on the ground. So you're doing, if you do aerobics, you're not going to jump around. If you're going to do like my oldest daughter is in a boot camp class, and she hurt her back and she can't do any high impact stuff anymore, but she's in a boot camp class. So when everybody's jumping jacks, she just goes one leg in, one leg out, and just does it all in stepping, and she gets a great workout. She sweats, she's in shape. She can't jump, so there's ways to find around the problem. The problem is you have to want to. That is the biggest thing. You have to really want to. And I feel blessed myself because I've always wanted to do that. It's just part of me. That's probably why I got into this work, and I love it, and I love teaching it. And I feel blessed that I have that desire. I think maybe growing up in Germany, we did lots of hiking all the time. Maybe that helped me also, because we did gymnastics, and we Germany, hiking and walking is huge. So I grew up with that. So maybe that's another reason why it's easier for me. But I know, having worked with people over 35 years, one-on-one, that's not always the case, and it's sometimes really difficult to get past that mindset where you just don't want to do it. Like Mariela said, I don't really feel like doing it, but pick something, don't stop moving. Baby steps, small goals. Set small goals and just accomplish that one little goal, and then you can set another one. It's that way too with weight loss. I have a client that was hugely obese, and you set a goal to lose 20 pounds, and it just looks like an impossible thing to do. So if you set a goal to lose 3, it's a whole lot easier, right? And so then when you get to those 3, already you're really excited because you made it, and then you might set up for another 3. So small goals, realistic goals, because if your goals are too big, you set yourself up for failure. It's like that with really anything. And keep track. We were talking earlier, before everybody came on, about journaling. That's a really good way also to see your progress. When I have clients, we have a chart, and I write everything out that they do. And as we progress, we add exercises, or we increase the weight on this, or we make this exercise a little bit more difficult, and it's all charted, and they can see, oh my gosh, when I first started, I did 3 pounds on this one exercise, and now I can do 5. So when you journal yourself, keep track of what you do, you actually can visually see the progress that you're making. My friend Teresa, I think she's gone, never did any kind of exercise on a regular basis, but then the doctor told her, if you want your knees to get better, ride an incumbent bike. So now she rides, she started with like 5-10 minutes on an incumbent bike in front of her TV, and now she's faithfully, probably over a year now, gotten to where she faithfully does it at least 5 days a week for 20-30 minutes. But it was hard to get started, and for her, it took the doctor saying, if you want your knees to get better, this is what you need to do, or you're just going to have pain and they're not going to get better. Whatever your motivation is, if it's weight loss, if it's strength, if it's health, there has to be a reason why you do this. I wrote down, okay, why do you think you should, and should in capital letters, exercise? Because if we say, well, I should exercise because this and this and this, why do you think you should? And then rethink that and say, why do you want to exercise? You might find some different reasons. If you think, why do I want to exercise? It may not be the same reason why I should exercise. Stop and think, why do I want to? Because maybe that'll help also with the motivation to do something, to get started. I was hoping we'd have questions specific maybe to those of you who are on, questions that you have and what you're doing or what you want to do, or a health problem that you have. Passive stretching. Angela asked the question, mention passive stretching. Can passive stretching just as beneficial or better as stretching by oneself? In some areas, depending on what's going on, passive stretching is you probably get a little bit further in your stretches than when you do it yourself. I don't want to give it, I don't want to say, I think overall passive stretching, meaning not passive where you are being taken through stretch routines and somebody else's. I do this with my clients at the end of every workout. I passively stretch them. I stretch them. Usually you get a deeper, more range of motion stretch when somebody else moves you, because you don't have to use the rest of your body to get into that stretch, if that makes sense. Like if you're laying down on your back and you're trying to stretch the back of your leg and you lift your leg up and you try to grab your leg and pull it in, there's other parts of your body that are involved, your arms, your shoulders, you know, you're trying to, so that sometimes prohibits perhaps, or you can use an exercise band and pull it, but then you're still holding on to that band, you know, and using your upper body. So it's a little, you probably will not get the same depth of stretch, but I mean, we need to stretch and we don't always have someone to stretch us. But I guess the answer to that would be, yes, probably you get more out of somebody else stretching you than if you just do it by yourself. But I mean, I had clients that paid me for my session, and that was part of what they did. It's kind of hard, unless, you know, if somebody in the family, like you can stretch each other or friends. I worked out, two ladies, they worked out together, and we did stretching between the two of them, like partner stretching. So one person would, like, for instance, you're doing inner thigh stretch and your legs are out like this, and the other person's legs are out facing you, and so the feet are together, and then I would pull that person back and she would get to stretch. And then I don't know if that makes any sense because I can't demonstrate, but you know, you stretch each other. So I'm holding onto her arms and I'm pulling her body forward so her inner thighs are stretching. Like if your legs are out like this, you're going to stretch your inner thighs. And then she would get into relaxed position, and then the other person. So there's a lot of partner kind of stretches that you can do too, but it's still not passive really, because one of you is working. So does that answer your question? I know I'm kind of talking in circles. How often should one exercise for it to actually make a difference to their health? How often should one exercise for it to actually make a difference in their health? Well, see, here we go to goal setting. If you've not exercised at all, I think if you set a goal of doing something twice a week would be a really good start. It wouldn't overwhelm you. You think, I can do that. I can do something twice a week. Ideally, and again, it depends on what kind of exercise. So we're talking about cardiovascular exercise, which works your lungs, your heart, and you get your heart rate up and you sweat, and so it improves the heart and improves our lung capacity, and it helps with weight loss. And then there's strength training or yoga or Tai Chi, which is a little bit more relaxed, or so it depends on what type of exercise. Weight training, when you weight train, you should always put two full days in between when you work muscle groups. Like if I'm going to work my back and my chest, then I'm going to wait 2 full days before I work my back and chest again. So you need to always rest the body 48 hours. If you're exercising to do a walk, to do more cardiovascular type of exercise, you can do that 6 days a week if you wanted to. I mean, it's highly recommended that everybody take 1 day off when they don't exercise at all. Your body just needs that rest. But again, it depends on the person. And I would just, even if you just pick 1 day, if it's really difficult to do exercise, pick 1 day, 1 day a week. And then when that gets a little bit easier, then you go, yeah, that's not so bad. I can maybe add another day, and we're only talking whatever goal you set. I'm going to do 15 minutes, or I'm going to do 10 minutes, or I'm going to do, whatever you think that you can do. And your goals will totally vary depending on what's going on with your body. But you set small goals and then you follow through. So ideally, You can exercise 5 days a week. You just vary what you do. You don't do the same thing because your body is going to get overused. Like if I do just the Stairmaster 5 days a week, that's the same type of exercise. So the same joints are getting stressed, the same muscles are working. And in the end, the body gets really used to it, and we're not giving variation because we don't just move climbing upstairs, So you want variety in your workouts, and there's so much now out there. It's just amazing what we have. Tries for it actually make a difference in their health. Kind of that. You need to at least do 3. I would. Okay, given that you're healthy and there's no other issues, I would at least minimally do 3 days of cardiovascular exercise that kind of pushes you a little bit. You have to be out of breath, then you back off and you get out of breath, kind of like an interval type training. The big thing now is to walk 10,000 steps a day. My husband wears a Fitbit and he watches his steps because it makes him feel good when he gets a 10,000 steps in. Personally, I don't think it's so important that it's 10,000 steps. I think it's more important how you exercise, that you actually push yourself a little bit past the comfort level, and what type of exercise you're doing. It doesn't really, in my opinion, matter that much whether it's 1,000 steps or not. So I'm not really that keyed into how many steps you do, and more about what it is that you're doing. And so does that make sense? How does one strengthen the knees if they have knee pain? I can't bend my knees in a squat. Should I use a stationary bike instead? Do you think those QB bikes, Jeff's asking, so do you think those QB bikes are beneficial or something like that? Just moving legs in a marching style while sitting, etc. Okay, let me see. Let me answer Jeff's question. When you say QB bike, you mean like when you're sitting in a chair and you're pedaling just this little cube, has like 2 pedals on it, and you're pedaling that? Jeff? Yes. No. Okay. Yes. I don't like them. It's just my opinion. Again, going back to Ivonne, when we worked at an orthopedic surgeon's office, and we taught I taught the injured people. Some of them, that's the only thing they could do, but they really aren't very effective. They move a lot. You have to put them just in the right place. I think if that's the only thing a person can do, I would say yes. I had a client that was, gosh, at least 350 pounds, and she sat in a chair and she couldn't walk. So in those instances, I would say yes, she had one. And, we did that because it gave her some movement. So her legs are at least moving, her knees are bending and straightening, and her ankles are involved. So I think for that type of situation, they're good. But as a regular exercise tool, I would not use them, if that helps. And Angela, you asked me, marching style was sitting. Oh, so that kind of, it's the same thing that you're talking about. All right, I saw her. Oh no, yeah, no. Usually I saw an infomercial for it and wondered if they worked. Let me tell you, most of the stuff that are in those kind of commercials where they're trying to sell you equipment, 90% of the time they're not worth the money. So don't ever recommend them. People buy all this stuff and then never use it, and it doesn't really. And even if it works, like the Thigh Masters, anybody remember the Thigh Master? How that was Susan Summers did that, and it was such a big thing. Well, you use that for a while and your muscles totally get used to it, and then what do? Like now you've gotten used to that. So that tool becomes kind of invaluable because your body's not used to it, and you can't go take it any further. So we want to have stuff where we can progress, not just these things that take you to a certain level and then you're done because it's not challenging anymore because it doesn't have any other use. Does that make sense? Like there's so much out there where you can progress, even with a jump rope, You can progress. You might only be able to do 3 or 4 jumps in the beginning, but maybe later on you'll be able to run down the street, jump roping. So you want to have something that takes you through progression and more challenge. I don't know if I answered Angela's question.
Angela was asking how does she can get straighten her knee. She has pain, knee pain, and she doesn't know if the stationary bike will help, or something that you can recommend for her.
Well, the trick with the stationary bike is if you don't put your seat in the right place, you can actually do damage to your knees. So if you use a stationary bike, make sure you know exactly where the seat should be and where the level of how high your knee comes in relationship to your hip. Again, it's not weight bearing. So I think a stationary bike could be really good as one of the things that you do. But I think that you need weight bearing exercises. So when you walk, you bear weight, right? Our body weight is on our, but when we're sitting, there's no weight bearing. So it doesn't help. Doesn't really help the bones. You know, when we walk, when we weight bear, we actually strengthening our bones. I think for movement, the stationary bike would be a good thing to do, but not just that. And you can do a squat, you know, you can elevate your heels, you can do a mini squat. Again, going back to our functional restoration classes, we had a chair behind the people, and then we put like blankets and pillows on them so the chair would be elevated. So when they had to squat, sometimes they only had to like squat this much to touch that pillow. Does that make sense? So make sure the chair's up against the wall. So when you sit on it, it's not going to slide away from you, but you can elevate your seat, and then you could do like, just try to see if you can't squat. And when you squat, you know, you're pushing your butt back. And so the chair really helps with that, because you're not going forward with your knees, you're going back with your butt because you're trying to sit on that chair. So picture a chair behind you, you filled it up with blankets and pillows. So now you only maybe have a 10-degree, you know, range of motion in your knee, or 15 or 20. So, but touching that pillow or that top of that seat, wherever it is, makes you feel like, I did it. I did this squat, and this is how deep I squatted. In the end, you know, we would test people because it was a workman's comp situation. We had to measure progress, and we would measure how far they squatted. And everybody, people that couldn't get on the floor, couldn't do any squats, was able to do something, you know, with that. And so eventually you have it stacked as high, and maybe then you take a blanket away, and then your squat becomes a little bit deeper. So I would highly recommend squatting. You just have to do it safely and minimally, you know, and you'll see that you get stronger. And it's really in the quads, which is the front of your legs, where you need the strength, and in the hip joint. So, oh, good. I'm glad you got that. Any other questions? If they worked, okay. How are we doing on time? We're kind of getting there. Did you want to, let's see, keep track, journal, friend, small goals? I think I pretty much covered my ideas of starting. And again, the biggest block we have is our mental, you know, and our mental and our desire. That's our biggest block. And Mariela,
I think that that's actually a really good, you know, earlier you had mentioned the mind-body connection, and I think that a lot of times we forget how important that connection is, and how we need to nurture both our body and our mind, right? So when we're exercising, we're just not working our body, but we're also working our brain. We're improving our mental health because we're moving. And again, there's a lot of studies, like I had mentioned earlier, there are a lot of studies that have shown that any type of movement, just getting up and moving, actually does increase positively your mental health. So again, you know, it's finding what works for you. And then if we were looking at the aspect of trauma, and when I speak about trauma, it's about psychological trauma. Manuela, you can speak about physical trauma, but when we're talking about trauma, you know, it can help when we're looking at exercise, we're looking at things like PTSD, we're looking at things like depression, we're looking at things, different types of ways that trauma can affect us. And then when we're looking specifically at emotions, right, it could be that exercise helps us to deal with anxiety, with depression, with fear, with stress. Stress is a huge one. So many studies about how exercise can help us deal with stress. And then you can insert your, whatever emotion it is that you want to work through through exercise. And when we're looking at trauma, and again, I can only speak about psychological trauma, a lot of the feelings that surround trauma have to do with not being in control of the trauma situation, right? And so part of the positive effects of exercise is that we are able to feel like we're in control of what happens to our body, because when we're looking at trauma, even though it may have been psychological trauma, it still affects our body. And there's an amazing book, and I don't know if you guys have heard of The Body Keeps Score. It's an amazing book. I would definitely recommend that anybody and everybody read it, whether it's about exercise or whether it's about trauma. But definitely our body, and we've all experienced trauma. I do want to put that out there. Our body, whether it has been psychological or physical trauma, remembers the trauma. And a lot of times when we exercise, or when we don't exercise, actually, it's because we feel that our bodies aren't going to be able to move as much as we want them to, because we have experienced this type of trauma. However, like you were saying a little bit ago, start slow. And the more that you do it, the more that your body is going to become accustomed to it. And then you're going to probably end up surprising yourself and realizing that, you know what, you are more flexible, or you can move better than you think you were able to move. The other thing that exercise does is,
Mariela, can I just say,
go ahead. Sure.
that just made me think about the endorphins and how important they are, because exercise produces help, endorphins in your body. I mean, that is a fact, a physical scientific fact, that the good endorphins in your body get stimulated when you exercise. And it just made me think about that, because that's the endorphins is also what's going to make you feel better. So I just wanted to say that, and made me think about that with what you were saying about the connection with the body, and the good that comes from it. So
that's actually a really good point. And I can tell you from experience, when I'm exercising, I just feel like I'm going to die afterwards. After my 30 minutes of exercise, then I feel like my endorphins have actually stretched out through my day, because I can feel like I'm more productive throughout my day. I can feel like that, the little death that I had when I couldn't breathe while I was exercising, now my endorphins have kicked in, and I feel like, you know what, this has definitely improved my mood. So there's a lot of benefits. Go ahead.
If you were my client, though, I would not recommend exercising to where you feel like you're going to die and you can't breathe. So you're doing too much.
Okay.
You should not feel that way. You should not feel that way. You should feel like this is somewhat hard. This is not where I can't breathe and where I feel like I'm going to die. You need to do less then. You need to just feel like this is somewhat hard. I'm not sitting in my chair. Right. That's easy. So you just want to start with, this is somewhat hard. So maybe, Mariela, you're doing too much, and that discourages you from keeping going.
Exactly. See, there you go. That's probably one of the reasons why. And the good thing is, you can find things on YouTube. There's so much more flexibility than there were a few years ago, where we can find different types of exercises. So, what you were saying, it's definitely doable, whether, you want to do it out with other people, whether you want to do it at home. There are definitely different ways, different avenues of us to pursue exercise. So thank you for bringing that up, that, if I feel like I'm dying, I'm probably doing too much.
Yes,
that's important to know.
I would take you as a client, go, no. I've said something, exercise could be packed in a pill. It would be the single most widely prescribed medicine in the nation. Well, here's the problem. It wouldn't really help your body because it's not moving. You're just taking a pill. So I'm not for that because that pill's not going to make you move.
Yeah, that is a good quote though. Thank you for sharing that, Joe.
Yeah. Yes, I have to leave. Thank you. I call my sister Julie. Her name's Clarissa though, but I'm used to calling her Julie. That's her middle name. So thanks for being here.
You're funny. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
And we're almost out of time. We have a few more minutes. I don't know if there's any last lingering questions. And if there are, please feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat, either one. Hopefully, before we let you go, you also received the worksheet. So you could have hopefully taken some notes on the worksheet that I sent out earlier this morning. If you did not receive the worksheet, I'll be sending out tomorrow with the recording of this conversation that we had today. And please also subscribe to not just us on Eventbrite, but also on our social media. And Ivonne has more to say about that.
Yeah, our community is growing and we're so excited for that we're able to spread health and wellness to a larger community. So if you have any friends that will benefit from our content, please feel free to join us in social media, Facebook, YouTube channel, and Instagram. And of course, during our events here at Eventbrite that we're having regularly. I think right now we're doing twice a month. And our next event is coming March the 2nd. We're having Restore Us Part 1. It's a relationship series. And we're going to talk about expectations versus realities in our relationships. So join us for the next meeting. It was great having you, Manuela. Thank you so much. And we hope that we can do one more of these events here talking about movement, exercise, and how to improve our health and wellness and in the process. So thank you everybody for joining us here.
Yes, thank you. Let's see.
We have one more comment.
Well, just comments. Thank you so much, Angela, Jeff. Thank you for website. I'll try coming. Great. Was really great. It was great having you on and having the feedback. Maybe one of these days we'll get to see you.
Yes, next time. We'd love to see you, meet you, and if you can join us for the next meeting that we will have with Manuela, that will be great. We'll send you information about it once we get it scheduled and prepared for you guys. So thank you so much for being here today. It was great talking about movement, exercise, and we're gonna continue moving, right, Manuela? We are not let anything stop us from moving because
just 5 minutes a day, something, right?
Yeah, it's the best medicine we can have, and I think that we all need to keep this in mind and make it a priority to a new goal for this year to continue and improving our movement and every day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
We'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.